Imagine working your whole life towards obtaining the impossible and actually making it to the NBA. The countless hours spent on the court, all the blood, sweat, and tears you put towards this one goal, and you actually do it. You actually make it to the league. For most people, their employment in the NBA would be sacred, and they wouldn't let anything jeopardize it. However, some NBA players just can't control themselves and end up breaking the law and putting everything at risk. With crimes ranging from grievous to downright disgusting, these are some of the worst criminals in NBA history. Real quick, I want to give a dishonorable mention to Karl Malone. The reason I'm not giving him a whole entire section in this video is that I feel like everyone's heard and talked about it at this point, but if anyone doesn't know, he impregnated a 13-year-old when he was in college and also proceeded to go on to refuse to pay $125 per week in child support. The child he had with this lady grew up to be NFL player Demetrius Bell. After many years of Karl Malone not wanting anything to do with his son, they actually hold a great relationship today, which makes Demetrius a much stronger man than me because I would want nothing to do with him. For our first actual case, we have a Utah Jazz player who is not Karl Malone, yet seems to have the same affinity for early teenage girls. This player, of course, being the party animal DeShawn Stevenson. Funnily enough, the two were even teammates at the time, yet again proving Karl's top-tier leadership skills and his unique ability to rub off on others. During DeShawn's rookie season, him and two of his former teammates brought a 14 and 15-year-old to a hotel, then proceeded to get drunk. DeShawn had relations with the 14-year-old, while one of his friends was involved with the 15-year-old. The friend who was getting no action just sat and watched, which there is absolutely no way he didn't have anything better to be doing. Anyways, the guys dropped off the teenagers at the 15-year-old's house, whose mom called the police after being told what happened. The mom then confronted DeShawn in a phone call that was being recorded, and he admitted to doing everything. DeShawn went to court, pled no contest, and then proceeded to get probation and was right back on the court with his idol Karl Malone for the next season. Can someone in Utah please tell me what's going on over there? For our second case, we have one of the best defenders at the guard position ever, Mookie Blaylock. Unfortunately, off the court, it seemed like Mookie had no regard for human life. He's been arrested 7 times on DUI charges, but surprisingly enough, that's not actually why he's in this video, although he certainly should not have been allowed back on the road, which would have prevented his major offense, vehicular homicide. In a shocking turn of events, Mookie was actually completely sober during the time of the accident, but blacked out while driving due to a medical condition. Normally this would probably just be seen as an unfortunate accident. However, Mookie's condition was brought on due to many years of severe addiction to alcohol, and doctors explicitly told him not to drive. His continued disregard of other people's safety led to the death of a woman named Monica Murphy, who was a mother of 5. In court, Mookie pled guilty and was given 7 years in prison and 8 years of probation, but only ended up serving 3 years in prison and a 4th as a suspended sentence. While it does seem that he's learned his lesson and has had no further incidents, I can't help but feel like his sentence was incredibly lenient considering that his negligence directly led to the death of someone. This next case is going to be a little more lighthearted, although the bar isn't set very high at this point, but Charles Barkley will be our next subject. This might actually come as a surprise to some people, but Chuck actually had bigger issues than women in San Antonio.
What kind of women are in San Antonio?
Oh, some big old women down there.
Why would you say that?
For starters, as a kid, Charles would steal cake from unattended delivery trucks at grocery stores. Then later in college, him and Bo Jackson would get free pizza by intimidating the pizza delivery man. Of course, these are 2 very unserious offenses, but Chuck does have 2 assaults under his belt. One was seemingly an act of self-defense, as Chuck stated that an altercation he had one night in Milwaukee was started after a man named Joseph McCarthy, along with some companions, walked up to him with a balled fist and challenged him to a fight. At least according to Chuck, because McCarthy said he just walked up to him and said he heard he's one of the baddest dudes in the NBA. Either way, that ended with a broken nose and cuts to the forehead for Joseph. The second, more serious incident happened one night at a bar in Orlando. Chuck was with his teammate Clyde Drexler and a few other friends when a man named Jorge Lugo started causing problems by throwing ice at Chuck and his entourage. Well, this escalated significantly when Jorge decided that it would be more efficient to just throw the glass along with the ice. The glass dome-pieced a woman and knocked her off her chair. Chuck rightfully was not very happy about this, so he caught up to Lugo, who began running away. From what I read, it seems like he genuinely wouldn't have hurt the man, but one of the women at the scene started instigating, and you know how that goes. He grabbed the 5'2", 120-pound Jorge and threw him out of a plate glass window like he was nothing more than a child. A piece of glass struck an artery in the man's right arm, which caused him to bleed profusely. Chuck was quoted as saying, "For all I care, you can lay there and die." Luckily, nothing serious really came from this. Jorge was fine, and Chuck had a few misdemeanors through his way and had to pay up some money. I just think this was wrong place, wrong time for Chuck, and while maybe he could have gone a little easy on Jorge, but it's hard to say he didn't at least deserve it a little bit. Outside of this, Chuck spit on a girl, got hit with a DUI while he was in a hurry for sex, but he seemed to have cleaned up his act, and at least his crimes involve people above the age of 18, which unfortunately we cannot say about the next person on this list. To start this off, viewer discretion is heavily advised for this next one. I'm not entirely sure what I can say on YouTube, but the crimes mentioned are of a sexual nature and were done to a very young child. The monster who did this was Eddie Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks, not to be confused with Eddie Johnson of the Sacramento Kings. It's important to make that distinction because the Eddie, who is a perfectly normal human, was accidentally implicated when a bunch of not very smart people at certain publications used his picture in relation to the crime. The waste of space Eddie had a decently successful NBA career but was banned for cocaine abuse. He spent his premature retirement continuing to snort coke and also just being an overall nuisance. He had been arrested around a total of 100 times and spent 5 separate stints in prison before the night of August 8, 2006. It would be on this night that Eddie would force himself into the home of his 8-year-old victim. The girl's mom was not home and she was only in the company of her 3 brothers who were all too young to stop Eddie from molesting her. Johnson ordered the girl into her room and then proceeded to sexually assault her. Eddie argued his innocence, claiming that all he did was kiss the girl on her forehead and that he was a friend of the children's mother and he loved them like they were his own. Eddie's excuses did not hold up well in court, and after just 2 hours of deliberation, he was sentenced to life in prison. I'm sure everyone will be delighted to hear that we no longer breathe the same air as this guy because he died on October 26, 2020.